Boom! Boom! The cultivator from the golden divine nation with the seventh-tier divine will stepped forward, and the sigh of the divine god rang out in the sky. He thrust his golden spear through the air. Golden light shot towards Yi Futian at an incredible speed. It seemed like it would pierce through him in an instant. There was a sharp sound as the golden light struck his body. The figure disappeared as if it had never even existed. But there was spatial will left behind in the place where it had been. It was an afterimage. The cultivator of the golden divine nation looked up. Yi Futian had appeared in the sky above him. The cultivator realized he was in grave danger. Given his level, he had no way to lock down Yi Futian in a space like this. A high-level cultivator could lock down someone of a lower level's divine consciousness. This was a common understanding in the world of cultivators. As long as one's divine consciousness was locked, they could not escape control while they were within a certain range. However, at this moment, he found that he could not lock down Yi Futian. This probably had to do with the great path of space in this area. The imperial radiance was shining down on them. And now Yi Futian's sword will seem to have turned this place into his own private sword realm. The cultivator of the Shun clan realized this as well. He looked up at Yi Futian. Within him, his powerful aura raged, and his divine will burst to life. His sevenfold cauldron shone with the incomparably brilliant light of the great path as it flew back to him, re-entering his divine wheel. The two objects merged, and suddenly even brighter light shone forth. The wheel of the great path flew out, and lines of terrible, destructive golden light shot out in all directions. There was nowhere to go to avoid it. He slammed his hands forward, and suddenly the combined cauldron and divine will flew up into the sky. Golden light streamed down from it in all directions. Yi Futian's figures disappeared one after another as he fled away from it. To him, the power of the great path that was put forth from a seventh-tier divine wheel was dangerous indeed. Brilliant golden light shone from the cultivator of the golden divine nation as well. He seemed to have transformed into a god, so celestial was his figure. He raised his hand and violently thrust his spear forward. Boom! A dull roar rang through the air. Yi Futian's field of sword will was shaken, and his figure flickered. A bolt of golden lightning swept across the sky, striking right in front of him. The Shun clan cultivator struck as well. When Yi Futian saw what was going on, he struck out with his sword. Brilliant sword light shone from it. All of the sword will in the area was integrated into it, and it resonated with the way of swordsmanship. It destroyed everything in its path, as it collided with the Shun clan cultivator's spatial palm print. Bang! The palm print was destroyed, but Yi Futian was sent flying backwards. His field of sword will shaken. He stared at his opponent. An upper-level Ren Huang was indeed many levels above him. Even using the will of the emperor, it was difficult to make up the gap in their power. Moreover, his opponents were unleashing the power of their divine wheels without stopping. They were seizing control of the great path in the area around them. In the space of single thought, Yi Futian unleashed even more holy divine path light. The radiance of the great path swept out, stretching out through the air in all directions. In an instant it had filled a vast area. The countless streams of flowing great path radiance made the two cultivators with seventh-tier divine wheels frown. What was this now? The earth and sky changed. The whole world seemed to be changing. They could feel that they were in another great path domain, one that was completely independent. The divine imperial light spread through the great path domain like roots and leaves, filling an endless area. The sun and moon appeared, along with stars and ancient trees. It seemed that they were no longer in the world that they had just been in. Even the will here seemed different than before. It had become much stronger. They had known that Yi Futian had a fourth divine wheel, a boundary wheel. Moreover, everyone knew that this was a very powerful kind of wheel. But there were few people who truly understood it. Only Shen Hao did and Di Wu. At that moment, they were now within the boundaries of this new world. The two of them realized that when they unleashed the power of their own divine wheels, they had no control over this world. They could not master its will. It made them feel like they were all alone in the world. Yi Futian now had the will of the emperor as well as his own world. He stood there bathed in divine light with his snow-white hair, making the two others feel that he truly was the descendant of some ultimate figure, and that he had inherited his willpower. Otherwise, how could he be so powerful? Yi Futian released the power of his divine wheels, and that of the will of the emperor. All of the divine wheels transformed, including the fourth one. This gave off a mystical feeling. It was as if he was the absolute master of this world. To those watching from outside, Yi Futian and the two others had disappeared. Motes of radiances floated like leaves, covering the whole area. The great path from the outside world was flowing in violently, sucked in by the independent world. "What kind of realm is this?" asked the Shen clan cultivator, staring at Yi Futian. He was an upper-level Runhuang with a 7th-tier divine wheel. This was the first time he had been surprised by someone with a 2nd-tier divine wheel. Yi Futian gazed at the two of them. Ever since he had become a Runhuang, he had never lost once he had used the wheel of the great path that he had forged with the help of the world tree. He had not even ever had to use his full power once he had entered this area. His opponents could never withstand him. Even Shen Hao and Di Wu had been nowhere near powerful enough. But this time, he was facing two upper-level Renhuangs with 7th-tier divine wheels. Although their divine wheels were not perfect, their levels were so high that even when he let loose the will of the emperor to use his ritual implements, he was still coming under a lot of pressure. But up until now, he had not retreated. "This is the world of the gods," answered Yi Futian, looking at his opponents. A look of confusion flashed in their eyes. "The world of the gods. This is shameless boasting," said the cultivator from the Golden Divine Nation coldly. He took a step forward. "Try me and find out. I am a god in this place," Yi Futian replied coolly. In the instant that he spoke, the cultivator of the Golden Divine Nation disappeared, transforming into a bolt of golden lightning. Bang! The great spear thrust through the air, but it did not strike Yi Futian. He reappeared off in the distance. He was still looking at his opponents with a cold light in his eyes. The cultivator of the Golden Divine Nation continued forward, staring fixedly at Yi Futian. Could he not slay him? A terrible booming sound rang out as the figure of a deity appeared. Endless rays of golden slaughtering light swept out, covering the area as they shot towards Yi Futian. The cultivator's golden spear grew bigger continuously, reaching a size of 1,000 meters long. The deity gripped the spear, looking mighty and unconquerable. However, at that moment, everything around them turned to a world of ice, stretching out for 1,000 miles. There was snow and ice everywhere. Terrible freezing will entered the cultivator's body, and frost threatened to cover him. But the cultivator of the Golden Divine Nation still continued forward, striding through the frost. "You know many spells, but you are too weak," said the cultivator of the Golden Divine Nation coldly. "There are freezing ice spirits here, and flames that can burn the sky," said Yi Futian slowly. Everything around them transformed into a world of flame. Fire and ice both assailed the cultivator, but they could not stop the celestial figure from continuing forward. "There are also death knells," continued Yi Futian, his voice faint. He stepped forward, and death will entered his opponent's body. The world turned dark as the death will raged through his body. "Time can stop." His seemingly faint voice rang through the air, seeming like it was everywhere as if by magic. Both of them walked towards each other. Yi Futian's pace was steady, but the cultivator of the Golden Divine Nation actually felt a bit threatened. Space was frozen, and it seemed as if time had stopped flowing, blocking his movements. Bang! He stepped forward forcefully with great speed, and divine light bloomed from him. He controlled himself, breaking free of Yi Futian's influence. At that moment, Yi Futian stopped walking. Sword will resonated across the vast area, and countless beams of divine sword light gathered together violently. He raised his divine sword as he stared at his opponent, saying, "There is also the sword of innocence." In the instant that he said this, countless divine swords cut through the air. The great path flowed backward, and sword will roared as it sped towards his opponent. At the same time, Yi Futian disappeared. A sword was born, and everything else was destroyed. The sword was able to destroy the air itself. Seeing Yi Futian's attack coming, the cultivator of the Golden Divine Nation raised his spear without any hesitation. He thrust it straight towards Yi Futian. Given his level, he would no believe that he was weaker than Yi Futian. Although he had been surprised here, he still had absolute confidence in himself. The sound of the god's sigh rang out, and the spear moved forward forcefully. The two attacks slammed into each other, their incomparably terrifying might giving off a frightening radiance. Poof! The cultivator of the golden divine nation's spear struck an afterimage, piercing right through it. Yi Futian's divine sword cut into the throat of the mighty celestial figure, but his body turned golden. His defensive power was truly shocking. It was like he was armored in gold. Boom! The figure that was as mighty as a god fell backward, as the sword cut into his golden throat. Golden blood flowed from the wound, but in what seemed like an instant another attack struck. The Tianshan cleave slashed towards Yi Futian. Another afterimage was struck as Yi Futian disappeared. His opponent's divine consciousness could not lock him down, and so his attacks could not follow him. This was his world. There are things both real and illusory here. Up in the air, Yi Futian looked down on his two opponents. In this world, as long as they gave him time, he would kill them sooner or later. At that moment, the cultivator of the golden divine nation stood firm. He placed his hand over the wound in his throat. Terrible golden light shot out of his eyes towards Yi Futian. Yi Futian had wounded him with a single attack. In this area of great path space, the two of them were extremely limited, but Yi Futian was not. This was his great path domain world, where he had absolute control. The two of them were of high level, but they still could not use their divine wheels to seize control over an entire world. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. There were almost no people in the restaurant on the seaside cliff, as everyone had gone to watch the battle above the sea. Occasionally, several cultivators would step up into the air to get a better look. There were almost no people in the restaurant on the seaside cliff, as everyone had gone to watch the battle above the sea. Occasionally, several cultivators would step up into the air to get a better look. Only one person left in the restaurant, a black-robed figure sitting there eating and drinking just like always. Mei Ting still seemed all alone. He was the only one there, and it seemed like the affairs of the outside world had nothing to do with him. But in reality, nothing that was happening on the Sea of the Path could escape his notice. Since going to the Heavenly Mandate Academy, he had returned to the demon realm to report to the demon emperor about what had happened there. After all, this had been an incredibly influential event. Even as one of the 8 great demon generals, he did not have the right to make decisions about it. After he had returned, he had received his orders, and thus had come back to the Void Realm. He had naturally seen the battle that Yi Futian had started, and the brilliant imperial radiance that he had shown was nothing short of astonishing. Everyone here was talking about it. Yi Futian had received the great emperor's inheritance in the god's relic. However, was that really the case? This matter was probably not so simple. Did the will of the emperor really come from the god's relic? Since Mei Ting knew Yu Sheng's identity, he did not think so. Perhaps it was nothing more than a symbol. It was lucky that Yi Futian, who had received the great emperor's inheritance in the god's relic, could use it to hide things. Moreover, no one would think too much about it. After all, everyone in the 9 realms knew what had taken place in the god's relic. Also, Yi Futian had been very blatant in all that he had said. He had claimed that all the gods had witnessed the great emperor's inheritance. Even if it was just to investigate Yi Futian's past, the god's relic was a crucial piece of the puzzle. Yi Futian had truly shaken the 9 realms when he had come out of the god's relic. He had begun to walk the path of becoming a legend. It was an indispensable part of his process of growing up. Many people would certainly think that Yi Futian had received an inheritance there. He had forged a perfect divine wheel, so he must have inherited the power of the great emperor. Thus he had transformed. Because of this, no one would know the truth hidden behind all this. Perhaps he had always had the will of the emperor within him? Perhaps he had already been extraordinary before he had ever gone to the god's relic, but had never really shown off his might. He had used the stage of the god's relic to reveal his brilliance and start to make a name for himself. It was unlikely, then, that the people that he had made Yu Sheng follow only changed due to the god's relic. Mei Ting obviously did not believe this. In his divine consciousness, the battlefield where Yi Futian was closed off. The endless might of the great path swept through the area. Futian had created his own world there. At that moment, the two seventh-tier cultivators, who were inside his world, both looked rather downcast as they stared at Futian. He had just wounded the seventh tier, upper-level Renhuang of the Golden Divine Nation. The Shun clan cultivator had attacked, but had been unable to hit Futian. Futian gripped his sword, and sword will surged into the heavens. He looked at the two of them. The two seventh-tier cultivators were standing together, back to back, each one responsible for guarding against a different direction. Whoosh! Futian moved, an incredible, destructive sword will exploded, making space itself become distorted. A figure suddenly appeared in front of the Shun clan cultivator. It was Futian. His divine sword swept through the air, piercing downward. Thousands of rays of light shot out from the precious cauldron in front of the Shun clan cultivator, each one containing great cutting power. They sliced through the air, destroying everything before them without exception. But even so, Futian's figure was still able to disappear. He reappeared above the cultivator and thrust his sword downward. The cultivator of the Golden Divine Nation thrust out his golden spear straight up. This time, Futian did not try to dodge. His divine sword descended, slamming into the golden spear. He was bathed in the light of the Emperor as his attack power grew even stronger. But when colliding with the seventh-tier cultivator, he still felt his internal organs shake at the blow. He disappeared again, but at the same time, a beam of destructive power swept downwards. The sword will left a mark on his opponent's body. Futian reappeared in the distance. The two others stared at him with ugly looks on their faces. The two seventh-tier cultivators could not lock him down, letting him hold the initiative. Moreover, whenever they tried, they could not cut through the space between them. They were not powerful enough. Perhaps if they were a little bit stronger, they could activate the spatial divine wheel. The will of the Emperor within the wheel made this realm too stable. Futian stared down at the two of them. Upper-level Renhuangs were upper-level Renhuangs after all. Even though he had the initiative, it would be difficult to kill them. They were ferociously powerful in terms of both attack and defense. Ordinary spells could affect them, but they could not do too much damage to them. Even powerful sword arts could not faze them. Even with his high level, his perfect divine wheel, the will of the Emperor, and his divine weapon, he could still only hinder upper-level Renhuangs. If they were at the 8th tier, he would not be able to handle them. They would even be able to attack his divine wheel. Of course, what he was doing now was already far beyond the norm of what people thought possible. No one would dare imagine that a lower-level Renhuang could fight two upper-level Renhuangs. There was the whole vast realm of mid-level Renhuangs in between them. If his sword could not affect them, he would have to change his techniques. Whoosh! The sword will disappeared from the world suddenly, and the whole world became gloomy and oppressive. Up in the sky, the stars of the great path whirled around, making everything feel very heavy. Many stars fell, slamming into those two figures. Divine radiance still shone from the Shun clan cultivator's cauldron. It swept out towards the oncoming stars and cut through them. The cultivator of the Golden Divine Nation raised his spear, and lines of golden light shot out of it, destroying even more of the falling stars. The cultivator of the Golden Divine Nation grew in size, becoming as massive as a god. He reached out, and his hand covered the sky, blocking all the stars and smashing them to pieces, proving his strength. If Futian waned to crush the two Renhuangs based on pure might, he would have difficulty doing so. He stood there up in the sky and reached out his hand. Suddenly endless starlight fell. A long staff appeared in his hands, giving off brilliant divine light. The will of the Emperor seeped into it. A dull booming sound rang out, resonating with the heavens and the earth. It was as if the power of the great path of space was all gathered together in that staff. He was possessed by a divine elephant. Ancient characters wrapped around him as his body turned into a divine furnace that grew larger and larger until it covered the entire world. Everything in that world became one. He had turned into an earth-shaking god of war. The might of a divine elephant filled him, giving him the feeling of endless power. Could his most powerful attack, launched in his own world, hurt the upper-level Renhuangs? The world of the great path resonated as it became one with him. When Yi Futian waved his staff, all the power of the world gathered into it. At that moment, the upper-level Renhuangs felt a dull pressure descend upon them. Yi Futian stepped forward, and divine elephants charged through the sky. His body transformed into a whirlwind, and he waved his staff in the air, whipping up windstorms that shot towards the two men below him. There was a loud boom, and the whole world trembled. All the power in the area had gathered together and fallen upon them. Before he even reached them, the ferocious power had formed into a wild, destructive hurricane that swept down. The two Renhuangs watched Yi Futian charging them, and acted at the same time. The cauldron divine wheel's power swept out as the golden spear lashed out. They did not dare take this too lightly. Brilliant spatial arcs appeared in the sky, and Yi Futian in a different area. But his staff's momentum had not been lessened at all. It flowed along like water. Bang! 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 Successive violent collisions rang out, making the air tremble. The two Renhuangs hurriedly changed the direction of their attacks to block. This ferocious assault had finally shaken them, sweeping them backward. Before they had even stopped, the great path roared. Endless stars fell around them, and they felt a powerful sense of threat. Yi Futian appeared behind them, cleaving at them with his staff yet again. Since their divine consciousnesses could not lock down Yi Futian, that meant they could not predict his movements. So they once again suffered a powerful blow. The two of them felt very dejected. They were upper-level Renhuangs, making them much higher level than their opponent, but they were on the defensive here. They had no way to control the great path in this private world. Therefore, they were restrained in all ways and had to take defensive measures. They had no way of predicting which way Yi Futian would attack from. Thus they were subject to the violent assault of the storms. The staff cleaved downwards, and Yi Futian's technique was becoming more and more violent. When the fifth strike came, they were a little overwhelmed. At the sixth strike, they let out groans of pain. Staffs fell from the sky, transforming into stars. All the power of the world was in those staves. They fell down from up high. The two people below did not dare use all of their power to block them, for they had already been humiliated too often. But this time, Yi Futian's staff did not change directions. It swept straight down. Crack! Cracks appeared in the cauldron. The Shen clan cultivator let out a groan, and blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. The divine Golden Nation cultivator was sent flying back as well. Both of them had been hit. But Yi Futian did not let up at all. He continued with his momentum. Staff after staff crashed into the cauldron, flowing as continuously as a stream of water. Smash! The cauldron shattered. The Shen clan cultivator spat up blood. His divine wheel was destroyed, which caused him a terrible injury. But in the next moment, many stars slammed into him, giving off a loud booming noise. His body was shattered as he was smashed to death. The Renhuang of the Golden Divine Nation trembled when he saw this. He began to wish to retreat. But Yi Futian's attacks not only did not lessen, they in fact, but also became stronger. He swept his gaze over his opponent. He gathered all his momentum into a single strike, pulling the power of the great path from the sky into it. The heavens and the earth resounded as he launched his most powerful attack. When the Golden Divine Nation cultivator's spear struck the staff, it was sent flying away, and the staff struck the Golden Divine Nation cultivator's body directly. In that instant, endless cracks appeared in his mighty form. In the next moment, golden radiance shone through the cracks. Two upper-level Renhuangs with 7th-tier divine wheels had been slain. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Everything returned to normal above the sea of the path. Yi Futian was the only one who remained standing there in one piece. Two high-level Renhuangs with 7th-order divine wheels were wiped off the face of the earth. Everything returned to normal above the sea of the path. Yi Futian was the only one who remained standing there in one piece. Two high-level Renhuangs with 7th-order divine wheels were wiped off the face of the earth. Countless onlookers who were watching the fight on the beach of the Sea of the Path were dumbfounded by the results. How did a Renhuang with a 2nd-order divine will kill two high-level Renhuangs with 7th-order divine wheels? Although Yi Futian had made a name for himself in the 9 realms a long time ago, This kind of battle was still utterly astonishing. Yi Futian overpowered his opponents when they were not at the same level at all. What would happen when Yi Futian advanced to the high-level Renhuang plane? Would he completely vanquish all the other Renhuangs? It looked like no one could question that Yi Futian was the most talented cultivator in the 3,000 realms of the Great Path. The result of this fight would come as a bombshell in the 9 realms again. Many people turned their attention to other parts of the battlefield. It would be a shame if Yi Futian met his death later in this conflict. He had the potential to become the fabled figure who could represent the 3,000 realms of the Great Path. He already proved that he could crush the extraordinary cultivators from the top forces in the Divine Prefecture during the last battle in the Heavenly Mandate Academy. He wouldn't be afraid of the Divine Prefecture at all by the time he fully matured. That being so, many people secretly wished that Yi Futian could survive this calamity and defeat the forces from the outer realms. Bang! The situation suddenly changed just now. Another burst of intimidating energy rushed toward Yi Futian. Even people who stood on the beach by the sea of the path could feel the terrifying might. What just happened? The crowd raised their heads to look in that direction. Numerous sharp, golden blades slashed through the void and directly flew toward Yi Futian. The blades left deep and frightening gashes in the sky. This unstoppable attack was launched by Shen Gao and thrust through a great distance. The Heavenly Mandate Academy had been at a disadvantage on the battlefield. Although they were doing their utmost to hold the line against their enemies, they couldn't fully withstand the attack. Shen Gao took advantage of the opportunity and fired at Yi Futian from afar. Yi Futian was a remarkably talented cultivator and a successor of the great emperor. Considering the deep and lasting enmity between the Shen clan and Yi Futian, there was no reason for Shen Gao to show him any mercy. He had to kill Yi Futian here, and now above the sea of the path. The gashes expanded ferociously and were about to swallow everything. The spatial sacred hall popped up and shielded Yi Futian's body. Yi Futian hid inside of the spatial sacred hall once more. Bang! The frightening blow dashed upon the spatial sacred hall. Even that seemingly indestructible ritual implement cracked and was blasted away. More and more cracks became visible on the spatial sacred hall, as if it could break into pieces any moment now. Yi Futian uttered a low rumbling sound as he tumbled and slammed on the inner walls of the ritual implement. He couldn't bear up against the attack from a master cultivator like Shen Gao. His life was hanging in the balance, even with the help of the ritual implement. Bang! The spatial sacred hall was shattered by the sharp blades that slashed through the void and blown to smithereens. Following that, the devastating attack shifted toward Yi Futian. It was powerful enough to annihilate him easily. Everyone watching from far away trembled with fear, eyes widened. Would Yi Futian bite the dust here after all? It would be a terrible pity if such a legendary genius were killed eventually. Every bystander felt a twinge of regret in their hearts. Bang! The wild and fierce attack didn't land on Yi Futian after all, despite the thundering noise. The crowd was staggered. They focused their eyes on the battlefield and saw another man appear by Yi Futian's side. With a domineering and solemn look, the man had jet black hair. He was also dressed in black. The dark demonic light flowed around his body and formed a demonic wall, which absorbed the crushing blow and didn't flinch at all. Yi Futian was also stunned. He turned to look at the man next to him and recognized that he was Mei Ting, the devil general from the devil world, who questioned Yi Futian previously in the Heavenly Mandate Academy. Yi Futian hadn't met Mei Ting since last time. He assumed that this demonic cultivator might know his godfather and Yu Sheng's background. He never expected that Mei Ting would show up again here. However, before Yi Futian could think it through, Mei Ting already grasped his hand and took hold of his body using demonic methods. As the dark demonic light flashing, Mei Ting turned around and made a quick exit while bringing Yi Futian along with him by force. A blast of light streaked across the sky and left the sea of the path. People watching from the seaside saw the light above their heads, but hadn't realized what happened just yet. A group of people emerged in midair above the coast shortly after Mei Ting and Yi Futian's disappearance. Surprisingly, they were cultivators from the Solar Divine Palace, who withdrew from the battlefield before. It turned out that they never left for real. Instead, they had been waiting to see if they could reap the benefits in the end. Much to their surprise, Mei Ting took Yi Futian away. These cultivators from the Sun God Mountain knitted their eyebrows tightly. What did Mei Ting want? Why did he take Yi Futian with him? Could it be that he appreciated Yi Futian's talents and intended to bring him to cultivate in the devil world? Who did that energy belong to? One person said in a low voice. He sensed another type of energy besides Mei Ting's. It seemed that someone else might step in even if Mei Ting didn't intervene. Did that mean that some other top forces from the outer realms might be watching Yi Futian and the battle in secret? The situation became increasingly complicated and interesting at the same time. More and more people were getting involved in this chaos. The bolt of dark demonic light traveled a great distance in a short moment, while the demonic will was surging in the sky. Yi Futian discovered that they left the sea of the path and the surrounding land and reached a much higher altitude. They were in the boundless outer space high above the higher heavens realm. Looking down, he could vaguely see a vast plate where the higher heavens realm was. What did Mei Ting want to do? Where did he want to take Yi Futian to? Mei Ting stopped abruptly when Yi Futian was puzzling over these questions. The demonic will was still swirling around Mei Ting's body while he stood in midair and surveyed the area ahead with his inky eyes. He remained still silently as his divine consciousness covered the infinite space. Yi Futian was perplexed by Mei Ting and said, "Thank you for saving my life. May I ask where you intend to take me to?" Mei Ting didn't respond to Yi Futian. He still stood there quietly. He seemed to be gazing into the void and spoke. "Why don't you reveal yourself since you're ready to take action already?" Apparently, just like the cultivators from the Sun God Mountain, Mei Ting also realized that someone else was going to do something if he didn't get involved. Nevertheless, Mei Ting forestalled his rival because he wanted to obtain some information. Besides, he was certain that the contenders would show their faces if he snatched Yi Futian first. Who were the people hiding in the dark? Could they be on his side? A surprised look flashed across Yi Futian's face. Someone else was here? He couldn't detect anything with his divine consciousness, nor could he sense any fluctuation in the surrounding energy. In addition, the invisible man must be so incredibly threatening that even a powerful cultivator like Mei Ting had to treat him seriously. So many people had their eyes on Yi Futian. At this point, a whirlpool emerged in front of Mei Ting and Yi Futian. A man wearing a mask walked out of the whirlpool. Wisps of energy wrapped around his mask and blocked Mei Ting's divine consciousness. A pair of deep and penetrating eyes stared at Mei Ting and Yi Futian from behind the mask. "I don't think you're the only one," Mei Ting said to the man. In an instant, two men came into sight from two different directions. They also wore the mysterious masks that concealed their faces. All three cultivators emanated a powerful and brooding air. No one spoke for a short moment, but everyone could feel the trepidation that hung thickly in the air. "Who are you?" Mei Ting stared at them and asked. Any one of these three people was a master cultivator at the same level as Mei Ting. This was not a lineup some random ordinary group could assemble. Only top forces from the outer realms could send these people. In addition, Mei Ting suspected that these people were not from the divine prefecture. Instead, they should be related to that person one way or another. That was why Mei Ting snatched Yi Futian, and he took Yi Futian to the outer space, rather than staying in the higher heavens realm. They could avoid detection and surveillance more easily here. Mei Ting from the devil world. The leader of the three men spoke while looking at Mei Ting. He obviously knew who Mei Ting was. Mei Ting was not surprised. He continued to stare at them in silence. The energy swirled around his body was extremely domineering and intimidating. Despite being surrounded by three powerful cultivators, Mei Ting still maintained his authoritative bearing without showing a shred of fear. Mei Ting was one of the 8 devil generals in the devil world. Under the great emperor's command, he couldn't give the impression of weakness no matter who he was facing. "Someone told you not to intervene," the man continued to say. Mei Ting's eyes squinted slightly. The man's words seemed to have proved Mei Ting's conjecture. "Someone? Who is it?" Mei Ting asked, even though he already took a guess. "You knew who he is," the man answered straightforwardly. Mei Ting took in a deep breath. Did he just give a confirmation? He really existed. Moreover, he had been watching the situation closely. If that was the case, Yi Futian would be alright even if Mei Ting didn't step in just now. Someone would save Yi Futian. Where is he? Mei Ting asked. Yi Futian's heart was pounding rapidly as he heard their conversation. Could Mei Ting and the mysterious man be talking about his godfather? What was his godfather's true identity? Who were these people? What kind of relationship did Mei Ting have with his godfather? And ultimately, who was Yi Futian himself? Yi Futian felt like his godfather did everything to hide his identity. It would make sense if these three men worked for his godfather. After all, it was consistent with his style since they also wore masks to conceal their identities. No one even knew his godfather's existence. However, Mei Ting became distantly aware of something from Yusheng. Besides, the Nine Realms was in chaos nowadays. The invasion of the cultivators from the top forces in the Divine Prefecture made the Nine Realms a big melting pot. Did Yi Futian's godfather get involved as well? These three mysterious men, were they here to protect Yi Futian? He said he will show up when it's time, the man said. Mei Ting frowned and made a menacing gesture. Nevertheless, the three men also unleashed formidable energy and made the air thick with dread. Yi Futian felt the worst at the center of the storm. He was in a lower plane and could barely endure the pressure. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Mei Ting stared at the men in front of him. The Devil Emperor ordered him to do his best to find out about that person's whereabouts. Mei Ting stared at the men in front of him. The Devil Emperor ordered him to do his best to find out about that person's whereabouts. That was why he seized Yi Futian. But it was obvious that Yi Futian wouldn't give up the information easily. It was probably very difficult to locate that person. What if I insist on taking him with me? Mei Ting said to the man in front of him. You can't, the man responded. Is that true? Another voice came from another direction. The demonic whirlpool spun menacingly as beams of demonic light shot from a source far away and converged somewhere close to them. Slowly, a demonic shadow took shape. This man was tall and burly, covered in bulging muscles. He carried a blood-red axe on his back, which was also emitting the eerie demonic might. The man wearing the mask looked at the person who appeared just now and recognized him. Yet he was not too shocked. Even so, it was a surprise that Mei Ting brought help with him this time. Based on his appearance, it was not difficult to guess the identity of the man who just emerged. He was Red Devil, another devil general of the 8 devil generals of the devil world. The Red Devil had a mountain of blood debts. His blood-red axe once killed countless cultivators during the war in the devil world. He slaughtered his way to the top and became one of the 8 devil generals. Now he was also here. It was apparent how much the Devil Emperor valued the information about that person, since he dispatched 2 of his devil generals here. Yi Futian had a million thoughts racing through his head. He never expected to cause such a massive storm that attracted so many high-level cultivators, including 2 devil generals. On the other hand, the 3 men wearing masks didn't seem to be daunted by the devil generals. Steady and unflinching, they still stood on the opposite side with absolute confidence. Yi Futian's godfather left years ago and disappeared without a trace. What was he doing? Did these 3 cultivators work for him? Of course, Yi Futian was well aware that his godfather had never exposed himself ever since Yi Futian was a child. He disguised himself as a servant in the Yi family, an unsuspicious old man in his twilight years. Later, he pretended to be a sweeper working in the String Pavilion, where Yi Futian lived in the Donghai city. The last time Yi Futian heard about his godfather was when his older brother inherited the demonic blade. It almost felt as if Yi Futian's godfather only existed in imagination. He was unreal. It was like a shadow that didn't have any tangible impact on the world. He was a real recluse. Perhaps he was also silently watching Yi Futian and everything going on from some dark corner right this moment. Nevertheless, someone wanted to bring him to light now. Red Devil, the man wearing the mask said in a low voice. He sounded calm and emotionless. His eyes behind the mask scanned the Red Devil. Can we take him with us now? The Red Devil asked. Not yet, the man wearing the mask answered. There are 8 devil generals under the Devil Emperor's command. Neither Mei Ting nor the Red Devil is among the top 3. Maybe we would allow you to take Yi Futian away if one of the top 3 devil generals came here today. But you two are not enough. Is that right? The Red Devil asked rhetorically. He stretched out his hand and held the handle of the axe. The gleam of the blood-red axe dazzled their eyes in the void. The Red Devil's eyes were bloodshot as he grasped the Blood Devil axe. The tension in the space became palpable straight away. Indeed, neither Mei Ting nor the Red Devil was among the top 3 devil generals under the Devil Emperor's command. Nonetheless, any one of the 8 devil generals was undoubtedly a supreme cultivator who stood at the top of the pyramid and could master any situation. Few people were capable enough to be their rivals. What kind of ability did these 3 masked men have to make them so insolent and arrogant? You can have a try if you want. The man wearing the mask looked at the Red Devil and said. The Red Devil stared back. The forceful demonic might surged and roared as he raised the Blood Devil axe in his hand. The glint of the blade shone brightly. Chop! The Blood Devil axe chopped down directly without any ostentatious move. The axe split the sky into halves and created blood cracks right away. This axe could gash the sky open. At the same time, however, a ray of golden divine light abruptly and brilliantly shone in the vast void. The man wearing the mask pushed his hand forward. Numerous dazzling golden circles with gorgeous markings and ancient characters inside came into sight and surrounded the entire field in an instant. A giant and splendid golden round pattern also appeared in front of the man. The golden light circles kept bursting out of the round pattern and dashed against the blood-red demonic light. The blood-red demonic light charged forward forcefully and shattered the light circles. Eventually, it crashed into the gigantic round pattern. Bang! The void shook violently. Surprisingly, the bloody light was gnawed away little by little. It stained the limitless round pattern with blood and blotted out the sun, yet still couldn't penetrate the shield of the masked man. It's you! Mei Ting and the Red Devil shouted at the same time. A person who used to be an all-powerful legend in the Divine Prefecture came to their minds. Many people thought that man was dead already, yet he showed up here unexpectedly with a mask on. How did that person find this man? Moreover, if Mei Ting and the Red Devil's guess was correct, who were the other 2 masked men? Could they be as strong as he was? Both stunned, Mei Ting and the Red Devil glanced at the other 2 men wearing masks. They were still standing there quietly and watching the scene without a word while emanating the same powerful, brooding air. Mei Ting and the Red Devil probably couldn't accomplish their mission if these 3 men were equally capable, and it would be virtually impossible for them to locate that person if they couldn't even defeat these 3 men. Right now, it was difficult for them to take Yi Futian away. We are in the Void Realm, a territory of the Divine Prefecture nowadays. I suppose you came to the outer space because you don't want to attract too much attention, the masked man said. Since that's the case, I think it's best if we don't have a fight here. The impact may catch people's eyes even from here. It's not ideal for either of us. As for Yi Futian, the 3 of us definitely will be at an advantage against you 2 if we really fight over him. Why don't you leave him here, since you can't take him away anyway? Mei Ting and the Red Devil knew he was telling the truth, since they had recognized him. They certainly couldn't bring Yi Futian along if the 3 masked men were equally powerful. When will he return to the devil world? Mei Ting asked. That person was the biggest traitor to the devil world. The Devil Emperor would want him back dead or alive. You can report back to the Devil Emperor that he will go back after he finished what he wants to finish, the masked man responded. What if he can't finish? Mei Ting asked. He won't go back, the man answered. That person wouldn't go back to the devil world if he couldn't achieve his goals. It meant that he would be buried in a foreign land. What is your plan for him? Mei Ting was silent for a moment. Then he turned his eyes to Yi Futian and asked the masked man. Obviously, he was ready to accept their proposal. Mei Ting and the Red Devil probably wouldn't let go so easily if they were facing anyone else. After all, they were the devil generals and subordinates to the Devil Emperor. Yet now, their opponents were following that person's order. Mei Ting and the Red Devil understood what they were up against, and hence became less determined. This was an internal affair of the devil world. Besides, Mei Ting also wavered from his conviction because of that person's perseverance and persistence. Why on earth did that person become the biggest traitor to the devil world? Why did he do all of these things? Mei Ting heard some rumors in the past, but he couldn't tell if they were true. We never showed up here. Of course, he will go back on his own, the masked man replied. Mei Ting shot a glance at him. Since he knew the man's identity now, he surely understood that the man could never be seen in the divine prefecture. They had to hide in the dark. The battle over the Sea of the Path may not be finished yet. Would you reveal yourselves if Yi Futian runs into danger again? Mei Ting asked out of curiosity. The two sides are evenly matched. I don't think the Golden Divine Nation can conquer the Divine Palace this time. The timing will not be so favorable the next time, the masked man answered calmly. Moreover, Yi Futian was supposed to deal with these events by himself after all. They would never expose themselves unless Yi Futian was about to die. Besides, they had a pretty good cover if they had to intervene. Cultivators from the outer realms flooded in the Void Realm nowadays, and made them less conspicuous. They would be spotted easily if they arrived at the Void Realm before the passageway was opened. All right. I will send him back to the higher heavens realm, said Mei Ting. The masked men nodded, then stepped back at the same time, and vanished into thin air. They left right away without doubting if Mei Ting would honor his words. Mei Ting was one of the 8 devil generals of the Devil Emperor. They trusted him to keep his promise out of basic respect between cultivators at the same level. They knew what kind of a person Mei Ting was. The Red Devil's body was still glimmering with the bloody light. He looked at Mei Ting and asked, "Do you know what he wants to do?" By he. The Red Devil was referring to that person, of course. Maybe he has the real faith, Mei Ting muttered as he turned his eyes to Yi Futian. That person asked Yu Sheng to assist Yi Futian. Was Yi Futian the person he chose? Was Yi Futian a descendant of Emperor Yi Qing? Mei Ting couldn't know for sure, but it was highly likely. Yi Futian's age seemed to match as well. Yi Futian, on the other hand, had no idea what Mei Ting and the Red Devil were talking about. He was astonished and confounded by everything he saw and heard today. If his godfather was the subject of their discussion, what did he want to do? He remembered that his godfather reminded him frequently, even when he was a child, that he was born to be an emperor. Was his godfather laying the foundation for that? Why did his godfather say he was destined to be an emperor? Who was his godfather? What kind of a relationship did his godfather have with the Devil Emperor in the Devil World? What did the Devil World think of him? Yi Futian didn't have a clue about any of these questions. Despite his strong urge to ask, he knew that Mei Ting and the Red Devil would never tell him anything. The chance of meeting his godfather again was even slimmer. He hadn't seen him for so many years. Where was he now? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1801 The Lower Worlds. Chapter 1801 The Lower Worlds. The Battle of the Sea of the Path was extremely brutal, filled with massive casualties. Even some of the master cultivators were injured. However, neither side was interested in dragging out the battle after Yi Futian was taken away. Many cultivators left to chase him and Mei Ting. After all, the main goal of the Shun clan and the Golden Divine Nation was to kill Yi Futian. To everyone's surprise, Yi Futian was snatched by Mei Ting. Did the Devil World intend to rope in Yi Futian? The cultivators on the side of the Heavenly Mandate Academy also wanted to pull back for now. They didn't find Yi Futian and decided to retreat to the Heavenly Mandate realm for the time being. Both sides lost plenty of cultivators in the Runhuang Plain before tranquility was restored on the Sea of the Path. Shangxiao Divine Palace, the preaching holy land that once stood in the middle of the Sea of the Path, was razed to the ground and sunk into the water. Even though some of the cultivators in the Divine Palace survived the battle, the Divine Palace would no longer tower over the higher heavens realm. A mass of cultivators pulled back to the Heavenly Mandate Academy in the Heavenly Mandate realm, including Emperor Nan and the Palace Lord of the Divine Palace. The air was tense in the Academy. The teleportation Grand Matrix in the Heavenly Mandate Academy played a key role in the battle and was still connecting with other top forces. Therefore, everyone withdrew back to the Heavenly Mandate Academy first. They flashed and landed in a corner in the Heavenly Mandate Academy. Surprisingly, they saw a man with silver hair hovering in midair and waiting for them. No one expected that Yi Futian would be back before they did. Did Mei Ting send you back? Lord Taixian landed in front of Yi Futian and asked. A strange look flashed across his face. Only a few people knew that Mei Ting came to the Heavenly Mandate Academy once before. And it seemed like Mei Ting and Yu Sheng had a history. Did Mei Ting get involved this time to help Yi Futian? But Mei Ting appeared to be quite rude and disrespectful to Yi Futian last time, until Yu Sheng stopped him. Lord Taixian was worried about Yi Futian on his way back, as he thought that Mei Ting intended to cause big trouble by taking Yi Futian away. It was surprising to learn that Mei Ting sent Yi Futian back to the Heavenly Mandate Academy. Yi Futian swept the room and felt a little relieved after realizing they didn't lose any master cultivator. Even so, their side still suffered a great loss. The battle at the Sea of the Path was so ruthless that almost a third of their people didn't make it back. It's a long story to tell, but Mei Ting didn't make things difficult for me. Yi Futian didn't explain in depth. Lord Taixian immediately understood that it might pertain to some of Yi Futian's secrets. He didn't make detailed inquiries, since Yi Futian was not comfortable with telling the whole story. Yi Futian looked at the Palace Lord of the Divine Palace and asked, Palace Lord, what about the Divine Palace? They certainly couldn't go back anymore, as the Divine Palace had been destroyed. It was unfortunate that they couldn't save the Divine Palace despite their efforts. Their opponents mobilized considerable resources and assembled an exceptionally strong army, to say nothing of their collaboration with forces from other realms. Although Yi Futian managed to kill 2 high-level Renhuangs, he was lucky to come back in one piece. It doesn't matter where we teach and preach. We can stay in the Heavenly Mandate Academy since the Divine Palace is demolished, the Palace Lord of the Divine Palace said with good grace. Of course, he was heartbroken that the Divine Palace was destroyed, but he couldn't change what happened in the past, and he still needed to remain optimistic and keep his eyes on the future. He surely recognized how the Heavenly Mandate Academy ardently supported the Divine Palace. He also believed that the Heavenly Mandate Academy was a real preaching force that could tide them over the difficulties. After all, the storm was not over yet. The cultivators around were moved by what the Palace Lord of the Divine Palace just said. They never expected that the 2 preaching holy lands would really merge into one. It would be a grand occasion that could cause a great stir if it happened in the past. But no one was in the mood for celebration right now. After all, they hadn't fully pulled through the crisis yet. The Palace Lord is indeed wise and clear-sighted. I'm willing to give up my place as the college chief and let the Palace Lord take over, said Lord Taixian. He also cultivated on the Taixian Mountain in the higher heavens realm in the past, and perceived the Shangxiao Divine Palace as a preaching holy land. He met and chatted with the Palace Lord of the Divine Palace during his trip to the Sea of the Path. He certainly wouldn't cling to his position after the Divine Palace merged with the Heavenly Mandate Academy. The Palace Lord of the Divine Palace was more suitable than him to be the college chief. The Palace Lord of the Divine Palace heard Lord Taixian and shook his head, said, We're both preaching holy lands. The position means little to us. Lord Taixian doesn't need to step aside out of modesty. Lord Taixian was about to say more when he heard Emperor Nan speak. We can discuss the arrangement for the future after this is over. Although the Divine Palace was leveled to the ground, we still successfully retreated to the Heavenly Mandate Academy, and Futian came back unscathed. Our enemies will not give up so easily. Everyone nodded in agreement with Emperor Nan. It was too early to talk about assigning seats and changing leadership. For the time being, let's send away everyone in the academy who are below the Renhuang Plain, said Lord Taixian. Yi Futian nodded. He shared the same idea that cultivators below the Renhuang Plain shouldn't remain in the Heavenly Mandate Academy when a big battle was around the corner. The Grandmaster didn't come back? Yi Futian asked. The Grandmaster didn't stay with them for his reclusive personality. He's all right. He left alone, Shen Luoxua answered. Yi Futian nodded without speaking further. I still have some ritual implements. Let's distribute them among the high-level renhuangs, said Yi Futian. In the past, only several master cultivators in the heavenly mandate realm owned ritual implements. But Yi Futian still had several ones in his possession. He didn't expect the battle to be so fierce, and forgot to give out the ritual implements beforehand. He certainly didn't plan to stash them away now. He was ready to hand around all of the ritual implements he had. It should be able to enhance their abilities to a degree even though each force could only have 1 or 2 pieces. People nodded and accepted without many words of courtesy. The master cultivators from the heavenly mandate realm probably would be clobbered if they didn't have ritual implements. After all, the heavenly mandate realm was weaker than the forces came from the divine prefecture. Most of their cultivators were also less powerful than their opponents at the same level from the golden divine nation. The potent ritual implements made a big difference in this battle. As people started to make preparations, the Heavenly Mandate Academy became busy and bustling. The cultivators gathered in the coastal city, by the Sea of the Path, in the higher heavens realm. They only made a small achievement by demolishing the divine palace. However, they couldn't let down their guard now since they didn't kill the master cultivators from the divine palace and the Heavenly Mandate Academy. They also suffered considerable casualties this time. Each force lost some powerful cultivators. They gathered at the top of a tavern. We don't know if Mei Ting took Yi Futian to the devil world. I guess even Mei Ting is impressed by the inheritance from the great emperor displayed in Yi Futian, said Guide Song. From what he could see, they all appreciated Yi Futian's talents. Yi Futian was such an extraordinary genius. If only he weren't on the opposite side. We might have some troubles in the future if he was taken to the devil world for real, Shun Gao from the Shun clan said. They couldn't go to the devil world. No one who wished to live could. Even Donghuang the great emperor didn't take the risk to attack the devil world. The Golden Divine Nation and the Shun clan would be in hot water if Yi Futian received training from the devil world and came back to take revenge. The thought crossed Shun Gao's mind, because he knew that he wouldn't be able to resist the temptation to seize Yi Futian if he worked for the devil world. There is another problem, said Gai Qiong. People turned their eyes to Gai Qiong and heard him say, the great emperor might treasure Yi Futian's talent if he learned that Yi Futian obtained God's inheritance at God's relic. Gai Qiong cultivated under Donghuang the great emperor. Many people frowned in concern after he raised the possibility. The great emperor might appreciate Yi Futian's talent if he learned about him. The Shun clan and the Golden Divine Nation might not be able to kill Yi Futian if that happened. Will the great emperor know? Someone asked. Don't forget about the empty imperial palace, Gai Qiong said. Besides, nothing can escape the great emperor's notice if he really wants to learn about things in the void realm. That being said, the great emperor wouldn't focus his attention on the void realm for no reason. There were millions of cultivators in the void realm. How could the great emperor have the time to learn about every single incident that happened here? He probably would only pay attention when something unusual occurred. Buzz! A beam of divine light shone brightly in the distance. A master cultivator came over and reported, Yi Futian returned to the Heavenly Mandate Academy. The crowd was stunned. Yi Futian returned to the Heavenly Mandate Academy? Mei Ting didn't take him to the devil world or kill him. It came as a big surprise. A cold look flashed in Gai Qiong's eyes. He said, Yi Futian of the Heavenly Mandate Academy colluded with Mei Ting, the devil general from the devil world. We absolutely cannot tolerate him in the divine prefecture. Other people were puzzled for a moment upon hearing Gai Qiong's statement. Then they understood Gai Qiong's intention. He wanted to trump up a charge against Yi Futian, colluding with the devil world. Inside of the empty imperial palace in the central emperor realm, the divine priests gathered in the empty imperial palace and gazed at the blue. Rays of dazzling divine light shone from above, as if they pierced through the sky. A group of people slowly came into sight and descended along with the brilliant divine light. The divine generals with stately bearing formed a circle. They looked arrogant and vigorous with their penetrating eyes and shining armors. However, it was a young woman around 20 years old who stood in the center. She looked elegant and dazzling. Her breathtaking beauty was out of this world, and made everything around her lose color. Everyone's eyes air glued on her. The palace lord of the empty imperial palace took a look at the young woman and realized that she was already in the Runhuang plain. This young girl probably was the envy of all the women in the world. Few people could match her family background. She was the daughter of God. She was born to be extraordinary. There wasn't a single woman in the divine prefecture who didn't wish they were her. Countless talented cultivators had their hearts set on her, but they could only think to themselves secretly, as they didn't dare to violate the taboo by talking about it out loud. It was hard to say if anyone in the world was good enough for this young woman. Greetings to the princess. The palace lord of the empty imperial palace bowed deferentially. Greetings to the princess. People in the empty imperial palace lowered their heads to show respect as well. Anything more than a glimpse of her would be considered a sacrilegious act. She was the distinguished Princess Donghuang, the sole heir of Donghuang the Great Emperor. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. The empty imperial palace obviously reported the chaotic situation in the 9 realms up to the Donghuang imperial palace. But they didn't expect that Princess Donghuang would come to the lower worlds herself. That it looked like Donghuang the Great Emperor valued the original realm more than people assumed. The empty imperial palace obviously reported the chaotic situation in the 9 realms up to the Donghuang imperial palace. But they didn't expect that Princess Donghuang would come to the lower worlds herself. It looked like Donghuang the Great Emperor valued the original realm more than people assumed. Princess Donghuang looked around and scanned the crowd. Her breathtakingly beautiful eyes only intensified her inherent majestic bearing. She was born to be a star who was lionized by everyone. As the apple of the Great Emperor's eye, her thoughts and reactions could directly affect the Great Emperor's decisions. Rumor had it that the Great Emperor would satisfy any request Princess Donghuang made. Everyone in the divine prefecture knew that the Great Emperor doted on Princess Donghuang. Some people said that the Great Emperor's overindulgence of Princess Donghuang's whims didn't fit his personality. But it all made perfect sense since she was his only daughter. Of course, he spoiled her with great consideration. Streams of light circled around Princess Donghuang's body, dazzling and brilliant. She looked like a divine goddess from heaven. She was the daughter of a god indeed. Dispatch my order. Summon all the forces in the 9 realms and the lower worlds of the divine prefecture to the empty imperial palace in 7 days. No conflict shall break out during this time, said Princess Donghuang. Her voice was calm, yet carried a strong sense of authority. Yes, princess. The palace lord of the empty imperial palace bowed to take the order without any question. Immediately set out to the 9 realms to relay my order. If any force from the divine prefecture didn't come to the empty imperial palace, they'd better not set foot in the void realm again. Princess Donghuang continued. The palace lord of the empty imperial palace nodded and replied, Princess, please rest in the empty imperial palace. I will assign people and set off right away. Princess Donghuang nodded and landed in the empty imperial palace. In the meantime, the palace lord of the empty imperial palace started to assign the task to messengers. Before long, a succession of cultivators left the empty imperial palace and headed to various forces in the 9 realms. The divine prefecture enjoyed a time of peace after Donghuang the Great Emperor unified the 3,000 realms of the Great Path and slowly established law and order. The Great Emperor must be displeased that the world descended into chaos again. That was why he sent Princess Donghuang to clean house. Still in all, the palace lord of the empty imperial palace had no intention of poking around for details. He only needed to follow the princess's order. Cultivators of other forces in the 9 realms didn't know about what happened in the empty imperial palace yet. The empty imperial palace was located in the central emperor realm, where the news first spread around. Right now, Futian and others were running around in the Heavenly Mandate Academy, in the Heavenly Mandate realm. They were preparing for another battle, and sent many less experienced cultivators to the lower worlds. Yi Futian and many powerful cultivators of the Divine Palace survived the last battle unscathed, even though the Divine Palace was demolished. Under such circumstances, the Shun clan and the Golden Divine Nation certainly wouldn't let them off the hook so easily. They're here. A horrific sense of pressure built up swiftly. Lord Taixian and others raised their heads and looked into the distance where a storm was brewing. In a little while, beams of divine light shone from the sky. A team of people came into sight. Instead of a whole army, only several cultivators came this time. But they were extremely powerful just the same. The two sides already had a bloody battle when the joint force closed in on the Divine Palace. These people only came to the Heavenly Mandate Academy again to execute their targets who escaped last time. They could kill as they wished now. Shen Gao and Shen Ji from the Shun clan, as well as Gai Qiong and Gai Tsong from the Golden Divine Nation, walked to the Heavenly Mandate City. Their overwhelming might enshrouded the entire Heavenly Mandate City as they stood in the sky. Every cultivator in the Heavenly Mandate City could feel their hearts pounding in the chests when they looked up at the master cultivators standing above. Did they come from the higher heavens realm to the Heavenly Mandate realm to start another massacre? These people were even more frightening than the Dark Army from Hell last time. Although it was a small team, every one of them was a living legend. At this point, a group of cultivators stood in the teleportation Grand Matrix area in the Heavenly Mandate Academy. Lord Taixian said in a cold voice, "If you dare to commit a massacre, we will activate the teleportation Grand Matrix right away and directly go the Nantian Divine Kingdom or the Shao clan in the Central Emperor realm, destroy the Matrix, and then attack the Shun clan." Shen Ji, Shen Gao, and other cultivators furrowed their brows. It was an effective deterrent. The two sides would die together. At this moment, the teleportation Grand Matrix suddenly lit up. Several people, including the cultivators in the Heavenly Mandate Academy, were taken by surprise. The teleportation Grand Matrix shone brightly as a man emerged. It was Xiao Dingtian, the clan lord of the Shao clan in the Central Emperor realm. Shen Ji and Shen Gao of the Shun clan frowned. The clan lord of the Shun clan specifically went to the Shao clan to intimidate Xiao Dingtian and other people in the Shao clan, so they wouldn't send reinforcement to the Heavenly Mandate Academy. Why did Xiao Dingtian show up here now? They certainly didn't believe that Xiao Dingtian could overcome the clan lord of the Shun clan unless something else happened. Yi Futian also stared at Xiao Dingtian with a puzzled look. Xiao Dingtian raised his head and glanced at the cultivators hovering in midair and said, "The divine priest of the empty imperial palace ordered that the groups in the 9 realms and the forces from the divine prefecture outside of the original realm shall not engage in any battle and must go to the empty imperial palace in 7 days." The empty imperial palace? A strange look flashed across everyone's face. Donghuang the Great Emperor established the empty imperial palace to inspect the 9 realms. But the forces from the lower worlds of the divine prefecture didn't need to listen to the empty imperial palace. The empty imperial palace seemed to be overstepping by ordering them around, unless the empty imperial palace inspects the 9 realms. "But I don't think they're qualified to meddle in our affairs," said Gai Qiong. He knew the palace lord of the empty imperial palace personally. Princess Donghuang arrived at the empty imperial palace. This order came from the princess. The empty imperial palace already sent messengers to the 9 realms. The Shun clan probably already received the news. You will hear about it soon. Of course, suit yourself if you still want to proceed. Xiao Dingtian answered indifferently. Princess Donghuang's appearance represented the will of the great emperor. Who dared to disobey her order? Princess Donghuang went to the empty imperial palace. Cultivators from the Shun clan and the Golden Divine Nation were stunned. It was certainly probable for her to give such an order if she really was there. Did the incident in the 9 realms already catch the great emperor's attention? They looked out at the Heavenly Mandate Academy. It seemed like they couldn't attack the Heavenly Mandate Academy at this time. On top of that, they might be in trouble if the great emperor decided to intervene. Yi Futian colluded with the devil general of the devil world. We need to arrest him and hand him over to the princess. Gai Qiong spoke loudly. He needed to pin the blame on Yi Futian first. even though he couldn't kill him right now. Yi Futian's brows knitted tightly. Colluding with the devil general of the devil world? Mei Ting saved him and took him away, and then sent him back safe and sound. It did sound suspicious. Besides, he couldn't explain the detail to other people. Talk to the princess yourself. I'm only here because the divine priest asked me to convey the news. Now you have heard the order. You should be responsible for the consequences for whatever you want to do, Xiao Dingtian replied in an impassive voice. Gai Qiong and other people were not pleased that Xiao Dingtian used the princess to pressure them. However, they couldn't act recklessly when the situation was not clear yet. After moments of confrontation, they talked with each other using the divine consciousness, glanced at the Heavenly Mandate Academy, then pulled back and left unwillingly. Soon, they disappeared from the sky above the Heavenly Mandate Academy. People in the Heavenly Mandate Academy sighed with relief, as the overwhelming might dissipated. Yi Futian looked at Xiao Dingtian and asked, Princess Donghuang went to the empty imperial palace? Yes, Xiao Dingtian nodded. A gorgeous face recurred to Yi Futian's mind, the face he had met twice before. The first time was when he was 16 years old. The young Princess Donghuang and the divine generals went to the statue of Emperor Yi Qing on the Beast Mountain in the city of Qingzhou. The second time was when she took Mr. Du away. Would Princess Donghuang recognize him from those two encounters? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Perhaps she wouldn't recognize him. Perhaps she wouldn't recognize him. As the only daughter of Donghuang the Great Emperor, and the most distinguished woman in the divine prefecture, Princess Donghuang probably wouldn't pay much attention to a random person she met years ago. But he could never forget her. Both encounters with Princess Donghuang made an indelible impression on Yi Futian. She killed the Snow Ape Emperor the first time they met, and took away his master during their second encounter. How could he ever forget that? Yi Futian had a special emotional bond with both the Snow Ape Emperor and Mr. Du therefore. Yi Futian hardly had a good opinion of Princess Donghuang. Dazzling and haughty, she could dictate other people's fates with ease. Even now, Princess Donghuang was able to simply decide if Yi Futian should live or die. In addition, Yi Futian believed that he should be on the opposite side of Donghuang the Great Emperor, because of Emperor Yi Qing. Nevertheless, he only heard stories about the legendary Great Emperor from time to time, and had never met him in person. Since he didn't know what exactly happened between Donghuang the Great Emperor and Emperor Yi Qing in the past, he couldn't convince himself to detest the Great Emperor wholeheartedly. Yi Futian only hoped that Princess Donghuang didn't remember who he was now that they were about to meet again. Did Princess Donghuang come because of the disputes in the Nine Realms? Lord Taishian asked Xiao Dingtian. Probably, Xiao Dingtian nodded and said. The divine priest said she ordered that we can't have any more conflicts in the next 7 days. I think she is trying to stabilize the situation in the Nine Realms. This is likely to be the reason why Princess Donghuang went to the empty imperial palace in person and summoned the cultivators in the Nine Realms and from the divine prefecture. But we don't know how she will deal with this situation. Lord Taishian nodded slightly. A million thoughts ran through his head. Everyone else was disconcerted as well. They hadn't fully recovered from the recent battle and didn't expect this turn of events. They were ready to fight to the death just moments ago. It was not a bluff when they said they would attack the Shun clan if the enemies dared to make a move. You should come to the Xiao clan so we can go to the empty imperial palace together when the time comes, Xiao Dingtian said to Yi Futian and others. The teleportation grand matrix in the Heavenly Mandate Academy conveniently led to the Central Emperor realm by a direct route. Okay. Yi Futian nodded in agreement. The news soon spread around. The groups in the Nine Realms all received the message from the divine priests. The intense situation in the Nine Realms quickly abated while people enjoyed the temporary peace. After all, top forces were locked in confrontations in many places in the Central Emperor realm and the Ziwei realm when the Battle of the Divine Palace broke out. A large-scale war might be triggered off at any moment at that time, But it looked like they didn't have to worry for the next 7 days at least. No one dared to disobey Princess Donghuang's order, even the groups from the Divine Prefecture, which were not under the direct command of Donghuang the Great Emperor. 7 days passed in a twinkling. When the day arrived, the top forces in the 9 realms all sent cultivators to the Central Emperor realm. Some people even set off ahead of the time and already arrived at the Central Emperor realm. Yi Futian and the others first went to the Shao clan in the Central Emperor realm through the teleportation Grand Matrix. After resting in the Shao clan for a while, they left for the empty Imperial Palace, along with Xiao Dingtian and other cultivators of the Shao clan. Yi Futian and the Shao clan were not the only ones. Countless cultivators in the Central Emperor realm, who were not even affiliated with top forces, were also heading to the empty Imperial Palace. Princess Donghuang came to the empty Imperial Palace. They would never miss the chance to catch a glimpse of the stunning princess of the Divine Prefecture, daughter of Donghuang the Great Emperor. Who didn't want to sneak a peek at her? Yi Futian led a mass of people marching toward the empty Imperial Palace in the Central Emperor realm. They met more and more powerful cultivators as they approached the empty Imperial Palace. Carrying their weapons, all of them were racing toward the same destination from all directions. Occasionally, Yi Futian and his group drew the attention of the passerby. It was as clear as day that they were extraordinary cultivators, even if they were not recognized right away. Some smart ones soon came to understand who they were, and would shoot them an odd look. Nowadays, the alliance of the Heavenly Mandate Academy was absolutely one of the most influential groups in the 3,000 realms of the Great Path. It appears that these people are going for the princess, Xiao Muyu said with a smile. Wearing a long black dress, she was among the crowd and looked graceful yet standoffish. She is the most beautiful woman in the Divine Prefecture, and the only one who is truly a princess. Naturally, everyone wants to have a chance to see her, Yi Futian replied. I heard that Princess Donghuang has unparalleled beauty and talent. I wonder if it's true. We can finally meet her today, Xiao Muyu said softly. I don't know about her talent, but her beauty is indeed impressive, said Yi Futian. Have you met her before? Xiao Muyu looked at Yi Futian surprised. Yi Futian curled up his lips but didn't explain. Xiao Muyu saw the smile in his eyes and turned to speak with the woman who was holding hands with Yi Futian. Masteress, are you going to ask the master? Hua Jiyu blinked her eyes when she heard Xiao Muyu. She was used to being called the masteress by now. Everyone considered her as Yi Futian's wife. She had gradually accepted it, and was not repelled by the feeling. Xiao Muyu was not surprised by her silence. The masteress had always been reticent, and only chatted with the master from time to time. The disciples were all used to it. Everyone says the princess is exceptionally beautiful. Masteress, you need to keep an eye on the master. Xiao Muyu laughed. Don't talk nonsense. Xiao Dingtian turned back and said to Xiao Muyu. It was fine for her to joke around here, but they would be in trouble if anyone else heard it. After all, she had to pay extra attention, even if she was joking about Princess Donghuang. What if the princess didn't take it well? I know, Xiao Muyu replied with a smile. Yi Futian remained silent. More and more cultivators showed up as they approached the empty Imperial Palace. People from various forces stopped outside of the palace. More powerful cultivators from top forces were still coming one after the other. Yi Futian saw a team of people forging through the crowd, not so far away, when they arrived at the periphery of the empty Imperial Palace. He had met many of them. Yi Futian exchanged a look with them, and slightly lowered his chin to send his greetings. A young man among them smiled and nodded back. Then they walked directly toward the empty Imperial Palace. They were cultivators from the Tianqian Academy in the Central Emperor realm. The young man who nodded back was Jian Qingzhu. Yi Futian stared at their receding figures with a pensive look. The Tianqian Academy seemed to be faintly aloof to him. Even so, he didn't take it personally. Who would be willing to get involved with him under the current circumstances? At the moment, another line of people brushed past them. Yi Futian sensed that someone was watching him, so he turned around and saw Di Wu among the cultivators from the Solar Divine Palace. Di Wu's eyes were burning with divine fire and fixing on Yi Futian. Diwu was severely injured by Yi Futian during the Battle of the Divine Palace on the Sea of the Path. It was surprising that he recovered so quickly. The Solar Divine Palace was truly capable, based on the strength of their connection with the upper worlds. Nevertheless, Diwu turned his eyes away in a short moment and moved toward the empty Imperial Palace along with the rest of his group. A succession of cultivators descended from the sky in all directions. Yi Futian also saw people he was not very familiar with. It looked like the representatives from top forces in the Divine Prefecture arrived as well, who wouldn't comply with Princess Donghuang's request. Yi Futian and the others also made it to the empty Imperial Palace. Someone was waiting outside of the palace to greet them and guided them into the empty Imperial Palace. The empty Imperial Palace once was Donghuang the Great Emperor's temporary imperial abode in the Void Realm. It was a massive and imposing palace. The cultivators were guided to walk ahead and reached an impressive, ancient golden palace. Countless people stopped and gathered in a large plaza. Yi Futian saw many familiar faces among them, who were all from the most powerful forces in the 9 realms and the Divine Prefecture. The forces were divided into different camps. Some camps seemed close-knit, while some were in a strained state. Numerous people from both the 9 realms and the Divine Prefecture cast their eyes on Yi Futian the moment he arrived at the plaza. The battle that happened 7 days ago was already well known. Everyone had heard how Yi Futian killed 2 high-level Renhuangs and several middle-level Renhuangs. On top of that, he proved that he obtained God's inheritance in God's relic and was the most talented cultivator in the Void Realm. He also defeated master cultivators from the Holy Land of Taichu in the past. How could people not fix their eyes on such an outstanding man? Is that Yi Futian? Someone asked people around. Yes. White robe with silver hair. How dashing. Quite a few people expressed their admiration, while some young men smiled arrogantly with a funny look. At the moment, several people appeared on top of the stairs in front of the plaza. The Palace Lord of the Empty Imperial Palace was among them. The Palace Lord of the Empty Imperial Palace looked at the crowd and said, "Let's wait for a little longer. Everyone should be here soon." More people arrived after that. At high noon, a person slowly walked out of the ancient Golden Palace. They immediately drew the attention of the crowd. A young woman wearing a red robe walked out at a leisurely pace. Setting aside her prestigious status, her face alone was breathtakingly beautiful. Everyone's eyes were glued on the young woman. She stepped forward and stopped at the position next to the Palace Lord of the Empty Imperial Palace. Her striking eyes looked out on the mass below. Yi Futian raised his head and looked at Princess Donghuang. She seemed even more gorgeous now. The Princess Donghuang he met in the past was still young and childish, albeit her apparent beauty. Now she was truly a stunning and irresistible woman, as glimmers of divine light radiating from her body. Princess Donghuang glanced at the cultivators who were gaping at her. Yi Futian sensed that her eyes stopped for a second on him, and Hua Jiyu by his side. He couldn't tell if it was his illusion, or if everyone else felt the same way. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Hua Jiyu had an odd look on her face as she transmitted her voice to Yi Futian. "She seems to be looking at me." Yi Futian was stunned when he heard what she said. Did he hear her right? Hua Jiyu had an odd look on her face as she transmitted her voice to Yi Futian. "She seems to be looking at me." Yi Futian was stunned when he heard what she said. Did he hear her right? Just now, had Princess Donghuang really noticed the two of them? So, was it possible that Princess Donghuang remembered him after their 2 previous meetings? However, that was decades ago. If it weren't because Princess Donghuang was so dazzling herself, he would never remember someone from decades ago. Therefore, he did not think that he would leave any impression on this princess from the Divine Prefecture. Gai Qiong greets Her Royal Highness. Gai Qiong, from Golden Divine Nation, was the first to bow and salute in the direction of Princess Donghuang. Although he served under Donghuang the Great, he hadn't actually seen the princess too many times before. He only knew that in the Imperial Palace of Divine Prefecture, the status of Princess Donghuang was quite elevated. Anything that she wanted to do would be unconditionally approved by Donghuang the Great. Greetings to Her Royal Highness. The rest of the people followed suit and saluted. Whether it was the divine nation or the top power of clans, they had to respect her as the princess, because what they were seeing in front of them was the only princess in the divine prefecture. Yi Futian's reaction seemed to be a bit slower than the others. When he saw that majestic woman with dazzling divine light all around her, perhaps subconsciously, he didn't want to bow down to her. Or perhaps because of Emperor Yi Qing, the Snow Ape Emperor, and his teacher Mr. Du, that he even had the brief thought to compete with Princess Donghuang. His foster father claimed that he was born to be an emperor, but all along the way, there was nothing but hardships. However, the woman in front of him was born into nobility. Were they fated to be mortal enemies? If there were someone whom he considered fated as a mortal enemy, then perhaps Princess Donghuang would be that person. It was just that he still couldn't figure out the relationship between the two of them. Who he was, what was his relationship with Emperor Yi Qing, and what kind of grudges existed with Donghuang the Great. He didn't move, and next to him, Hua Jiyu followed his lead. But then Yi Futian lowered his head slightly and followed others' examples. In this brief moment, many things went through his mind. Even though his mood was contentious, he thought of his foster father, who had kept a low profile, unwilling to reveal everything for many years. He didn't want to be discovered because of his pride. That would not do justice to those who cared about him the most. In any case, now that he had come to the point where Princess Donghuang was within his reach, the truth shouldn't be hidden much longer. As if noticed Yi Futian's hesitation, Princess Donghuang glanced in his direction but said nothing. She surveyed the crowd and said, "Have the forces in the 9 realms and from the divine prefecture outside the original realm all arrived?" As far as we know, except for the Hidden Land realm, which is controlled by Hell, everyone else should have arrived, answered the Palace Lord of Empty Imperial Palace, who was next to her. More than 300 years ago, there was turmoil in the divine prefecture. It was said that the original realm was in chaos, which many of you here must have experienced personally. Later, when the world was settled, an order was re-established, all principalities preached, and the original realm was united. Now that the passage to the original realm had opened, and the forces of the Dark Court is interfering once again, reigniting the disputes in the 9 realms. I heard that everyone is busy launching wars to fight for the control of the 9 realms, Princess Donghuang said, standing in the sky above and looking at the crowd. Her voice carried some coldness, but it gave her audience an indescribable sense of arrogance. A few words from her, who was surrounded by divine light, actually brought a slight pressure to those cultivators from the top forces. Furthermore, I heard that several forces have already been destroyed and erased from the original realm, Princess Donghuang continued. She looked in the direction of the golden divine nation among the crowd and said, "Gai Qiong, isn't that right?" Gai Qiong was taken aback for a moment as he looked up at Princess Donghuang. He stood up straight and saluted Princess Donghuang. "Your Royal Highness, there are indeed struggles in the 9 realms now. Although there has been quite a bit of damage, there are many forces here that acted out of consideration for the future of the original realm. Now that the passage is opened, the Dark Court has invaded, and the order of the 9 realms will need to be re-established. Many forces from the divine prefecture are far stronger than the forces from the original realm. If they gain control of the original realm, they will consolidate and reshape its overall strength." Princess Donghuang nodded as she took a step forward. Looking down at Gai Qiong below, she said, "There is some logic in what you are saying. You have been summoned here today. All the top forces from the original realm and the divine prefecture are now gathered here. Why not re-establish the order of things right here and let the battle decide? Those who survived will have the control of the original realm, while the fallen are counted out. This way, the order will be restored without further quarrels. What say you?" Gai Qiong dodged her inquiring look, his head slightly lowered, and he did not answer. Obviously, the princess seemed a little dissatisfied with this arrangement, and her will may directly affect the decision of the great emperor. It could even be said that since Princess Donghuang had come down here herself, she could certainly represent the will of Donghuang the Great. People from the other forces didn't say much. Were they going to fight a battle right here, right now? Who could leave here with their lives when this day was said and done was still an unknown? Many of these forces had brought with them their best from the younger generation, so it was possible that they had some ideas of their own. Although they understood that there was almost no chance, they were hoping to leave an impression, so that there may be opportunities in the future to interact with Princess Donghuang again. After all, no matter how outstanding the princess was, she was a woman, after all, and she may meet someone she liked. However, there was no one in the land of the Divine Prefecture who could match the status of Princess Donghuang, so there was no harm in having high hopes. However, when they saw the magnificence of Princess Donghuang, they had a feeling it would be very difficult. Princess Donghuang, as surrounded by divine light, was a powerful and majestic being, with the demeanor of a future empress. Perhaps she might become the empress in the future. Your Royal Highness, the Solar Divine Palace was originally a branch of our Solar Divine Mountain. Now that we have come here, just to bring the Solar Divine Palace back to the fold of the Divine Mountain. Presently, the solar realm is weak in cultivation, so I summoned all the forces in the solar realm, as they are willing to follow me to cultivate with the Solar Divine Mountain as a united front. From now on, the Solar Divine Mountain will preach the divine flames of the great path in the solar realm, adhering to the will of the great emperor, to make the cultivators of the solar realm even stronger. We will not interfere with other realms, said the cultivator from Solar Divine Mountain, attempting to justify himself. But clearly, since the solar realm had already gotten what they wanted, they would not easily let it go. His statement was a hint that now the solar realm was under the control of the Solar Divine Mountain. As long as the princess didn't object, there would not be many changes in the future. Moreover, in this case, the princess wouldn't be able to say much. Princess Donghuang glanced at the other, and did not say much. She knew that the solar realm meant a great deal to the Solar Divine Mountain, and that was something they wouldn't reveal. What about the others? Princess Donghuang asked again. I called you here today to let you choose for yourselves how to restore the order to the original realm. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. After Donghuang the Great unified the Divine Prefecture, there was peace in the land. After Donghuang the Great unified the Divine Prefecture, there was peace in the land. Now that discords reigned once again in the original realm, it was enough to compel Princess Donghuang to come to the lower worlds personally to restore the order. Everyone knew that it was because those in charge didn't want the original realm to fall into endless chaos again. However, the matter of restoring order was not an easy one. Donghuang the Great could directly appoint a ruler in each realm, but this would be an unpopular move that was sure to displease many people and principalities. Moreover, doing so could be regarded as breaking some of the rules long abided by in the world of cultivation. After all, in the ruthless world of cultivation, even if the great emperor were to appoint someone to manage it, if that person's power was not enough to convince the others, it would be a great cause for concern. The princess came to the lower worlds in person. It must be because the princess didn't want to see the original realm destroyed. The world of cultivation operates by its own rules. Now that the passage to the Divine Prefecture is opened, the future of the Void Realm will be forever changed. Even if all the same forces were allowed to remain in control of the 9 realms, if their strengths were not enough, the Dark Court still has a chance to overtake them. At this time, someone stood up and spoke, and the speaker was from one of the forces from Divine Prefecture, which had spearheaded the war against the Divine Palace. It was the Mo clan from the Divine Prefecture, which was extremely powerful. Therefore, if the princess wants to re-establish the order, I suggest following the natural rules of the world of cultivation, and let those who possess the ability to preach in the original realm. This way, the original realm can be more stable, and will grow to be even stronger in the future. I agree too, the cultivator from the Holy Land of Taichu said. We agree too, Some other forces from Divine Prefecture also expressed their opinions. In terms of overall strength, the top forces of the Divine Prefecture would undoubtedly overpower the top forces of the Void Realm. Those who had come to the lower worlds were only part of the whole. Therefore, as far as these forces from Divine Prefecture were concerned, they certainly hoped to use their strength to determine to whom the 9 realms should belong. Princess Donghuang listened quietly. She looked at the cultivators who had spoken and understood clearly. With the passage to the original realm now open, these forces would not easily pass up this opportunity. Even though the original realm had long been in decline, but here was the origin of the world after all. It was a primal realm, the beginning of the heavenly path. Everything in the world had its own rules of operation. Original realm, as the beginning of heavenly path. No matter how desolate it was now, its own existence represented something far more. Where about the others? Princess Donghuang looked at the forces from the original realm and asked. The weak were eaten by the strong, and strength was what had always been prized in the world of cultivation. Even if she did not interfere, everything in the Void Realm would eventually evolve in the same direction. Whoever was the strongest would control the dialogue of the 9 realms. This was the rule of all things, and she would not be the one to break it first. You are summoned here today to establish order. Any opinion is welcome, Princess Donghuang continued. I don't agree with the others, Futian said. Princess Donghuang lowered her head as her sight fell upon Futian and asked, what is your reason? The top powers of Divine Prefecture in the upper worlds have been developing for a lot longer. So of course they are stronger than the powers in the original realm. If the decision is simply based on strength, then there is no reason why everything should happen the way it did. The Great Emperor rules the whole world, so the Imperial Palace is naturally the strongest of all in Divine Prefecture. According to the logic of the opponent, the empty Imperial Palace has already been assigned the Great Emperor to watch over the original realm, so all the forces in the original realm just need to follow the orders of the empty Imperial Palace. Futian said to Princess Donghuang. The Great Emperor is busy enough, ruling the Divine Prefecture. How can he have the time to oversee everything that happens in the original realm? Gai Qiong answered coldly. You are right. The top powers of Divine Prefecture have already been established outside of the original realm for countless years. How many will really spend their time in the original realm to preach? Futian responded nonchalantly. If this is the case, why bother to launch a war? All you needed to do was to come down to the lower worlds with your entire force and preach in the original realm. I'm sure it would attract the interest of countless cultivators. If any force in the Divine Prefecture did this, even the Heavenly Mandate Academy would be willing to submit under its control. That's right. The forces that came from Divine Prefecture are not native to the realm and have no stake in the original realm. To say that their purpose is to make the original realm stronger is just an excuse for their invasion. In reality, their goal is really to gain control of the original realm for their own purpose. In this way, they can obtain the greatest benefit with the least cost. Once they have the control of the original realm, those top figures who have come to the lower worlds will probably leave right away. Lord Taixian also added, the Holy Land of Taichu, for instance, wanted to lay hands on the Heavenly Mandate Academy once. It is clear that these foreign principalities do not really have the best interest of the cultivators from the original realm in mind, much less whether they lived or died. I agree that if there are forces from Divine Prefecture that are willing to relocate here to preach and cultivate, there is no need for a battle. The Divine Palace is willing to assist in their efforts in preaching, said the Palace Lord of the Divine Palace. So, you mean that the forces from the Divine Prefecture should not interfere in the original realm? Princess Donghuang looked at Futian and asked him. They can. Futian said. However, since they truly want to base themselves in the original realm to preach and cultivate, the cultivators from the Divine Prefecture are willing to come and help the original realm to resist the invasion of the Dark Army. I would propose that within a certain period, they should stay and guard the original realm as their own, just as the cultivators based in original realm. It won't do if they just take control and then leave. Princess Donghuang nodded when she heard what Yi Futian had to say and responded, "This is a good suggestion. Do any of you have any other suggestions?" When His Majesty unified the land, his hope was that the world could cultivate in peace. Tianshan Academy has been preaching in the original realm in accordance with the will of His Majesty. We did not expect to face these changes again today. However, no matter how the original realm evolves, it will only get stronger in the end. We only hope that when the forces launch its battle for control of the original realm, everyone can restrain themselves somewhat, so that no more clans would be obliterated completely. It is cruel and meaningless, and contradicts His Majesty's will, said an elder in the direction of Tianshan Academy. That person was the college chief of the Tianshan Academy, also the clan lord of the Jian family. Once, he was instructed by Donghuang the Great to lead his clan to migrate from the divine prefecture to the original realm. Over the years, he had been diligent and conscientious in his duties. It wasn't until he had seen the arrival of Princess Donghuang that some other ideas began to emerge in his mind. The Jian family has been preaching in the original realm for many years. We are much indebted, said Princess Donghuang while looked at the college chief of Tianshan Academy. It is an honor to serve your Royal Highness, said the college chief of Tianshan Academy. Princess Donghuang nodded. Any other suggestions? People whispered among themselves. What these people said before, in fact, had already included most of their thoughts. In this case, according to all of your suggestions, the future order of the original realm will be as follows. Princess Donghuang continued. Going forward, I will not forbid any forces from Divine Prefecture that wants to fight for control here. However, such an endeavor must be reported to the empty Imperial Palace. Afterward, each side will need to reach an agreement on when to dispatch cultivators to battle. Fighters automatically forfeit their lives. The winner will control the territory they fought for, but they shall not kill others who did not participate in the battle. In addition, all those from Divine Prefecture who participated in the war must guard the Void Realm for a period of 10 years. They are not allowed to leave within these 10 years. Everyone was a little surprised at the speed with which Princess Donghuang made those decisions. She took everyone's opinions into consideration so fast and re-established the order so quickly that it was somewhat astounding. However, it was indeed quite perfect. As such, the fighting would be done with the regulations of rules, so that it would not lead to complete chaos. For example, in the previous battle, if forces such as the Golden Divine Nation wanted to launch a war against the Divine Palace, they must first report to the empty Imperial Palace, then notify the Divine Palace. Each side would then designate cultivators to participate in the fight, regardless of life or death, but those who did not participate would not be affected. Forces from Divine Prefecture were not barred from participating, because it would be impossible to prevent them from fighting for a chance to win. But the premise was that for those from the Divine Prefecture, participation in the war meant that they were willing to guard the original realm. Within 10 years, they were not allowed to leave its boundary. In this way, the forces from the Divine Prefecture would be greatly restricted. Otherwise, the top forces from the Divine Prefecture could send even stronger reinforcement to the original realm, to the point that those in the original realm would not be able to defend themselves. In that scenario, it wouldn't take long for them to become the vessels of the top principalities in Divine Prefecture, just like the Solar Realm. One could say that the order established by Princess Donghuang was relatively advantageous to those in the original realm. Do you have any opinions on this? Princess Donghuang asked all the cultivators who were present. The crowd was silent. Such rules were hard to refute, because it was very reasonable. And it was impossible for the forces in the original realm to refuse to accept the arrangement on the basis that they were weaker. If so, they would not be worthy of retaining their command of the realm under the current circumstances. Princess is judicious indeed, the college chief of Tianshan Academy said loudly. Many people had a surprised look on their face. The college chief of Tianshan Academy was an extraordinary character himself. But today, it seemed like he was full of flattery. However, the heads of many top principalities knew a bit about the origins of the Jian family. so they weren't really surprised. They were a force that was dispatched directly from the Divine Prefecture. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Princess Donghuang had already made her decision, and it was seconded by the college chief of Tianshan Academy. There was not much for the others to object. Princess Donghuang had already made her decision, and it was seconded by the college chief of Tianshan Academy. There was not much for the others to object. Even though the princess was young in age, but as the only heir of Donghuang the Great, none of the principalities from Divine Prefecture dared to disagree with her. More importantly, the rules specified by Princess Donghuang were well balanced, so there was really nothing to object to. Such rules did not only contradict the rules of the cultivation world, but were still able to maintain the order of the 9 realms. No unnecessary killings could ensue, leading to the collapse of order and the completely and utterly annihilation of many more forces and cultivators. Since you do not object, then it is decided. In the future, anyone who disobeys and violates the order of the 9 realms will do so at his own risk. Princess Donghuang's voice was clear but cold, and her words were full of authority. All the cultivators were now immersed in their own thoughts. As such, it would be impossible for them to do whatever they pleased as before. Yi Futian and the others did not say anything. The divine palace was destroyed not long ago, and they came out of that the losers with a great disadvantage. Ganged up by their opponents, they had no advantage to speak of, and not in a position to question these rules. They would not have their revenge, now even if they were given a chance. So, it seemed that they could only fight against the others within the bounds of these rules. Furthermore, they knew that it was to their advantage that the forces of Divine Prefecture were restricted in this way. After all, the power of Divine Prefecture was strong beyond question. If the army that came was from the Holy Land of Taichu, then the outcome of that battle might have been very different. In addition, the empty Imperial Palace will distribute the rules. In the future, anyone from the Divine Prefecture who come down to the original realm neglected these rules, please do your part to remind them. Princess Donghuang continued. Now that the passage is opened, the original realm is in turmoil with all forces eagerly watching for their chances. As principalities of Divine Prefecture, you should do your utmost to protect and maintain the order of the original realm. The Jian family guarded Tianshan Academy these years, did as we were ordered, and we cultivated some good people for the original realm. Now that the original realm is unsettled, Tianshan Academy will take the lead in restoring the order. In addition to preaching, we will call up the cultivators from all sides to protect the original realm together, continued the college chief of Tianshan Academy. Many people looked at him again. They seemed to be rather verbose today. It seemed that he couldn't wait to show off his merits, so that he could be allowed to return to the Divine Prefecture. Some principalities wanted to come to the original realm, but they wanted to return to Divine Prefecture. Of course, those principalities that wanted to come to the original realm just want to stay momentarily, not settling there for the long run. Everything that the Jian family did, the Imperial Palace is well aware of, Princess Donghuang said. Princess, I have one more matter to report. At this moment, Gai Qiong walked out, bowing with both of his hands together. Proceed. Previously, in the battle at the Sea of the Path, Yi Futian was rescued by Mei Ting, the devil general from the devil world. Later, he was returned to the heavenly mandate realm unharmed. I felt that Yi Futian might have some relationship with the devil world. A lot of people were there at the time and saw it for themselves, Gai Qiong said. That's right, Mei Ting took Yi Futian from the Sea of the Path. The cultivators from the Shen clan also added. Now, under the rules established by Princess Donghuang, it was even more difficult to kill Yi Futian. So, it was worth trying to see if they could get rid of this thorn at their side some other way. Princess Donghuang looked at Yi Futian as her long black hair flying in the wind, exuding noble beauty. She did not speak, as if she was waiting for Yi Futian to explain. Yi Futian looked up at her and didn't say anything. The cold and aloof look in her eyes caused some disturbance in his heart. Deep down inside, he sensed some desire to compete with her. "Are you not going to explain?" Princess Donghuang asked. "Mei Ting did take me away from the sea of the path. I can't explain that." Yi Futian replied. "As for the rest, I believe the princess will be the judge of that. Since they said that many people were there, and everyone had seen it, why would I come back if I did collude with the devil world?" What Yi Futian said seemed logical enough. Then, why did Mei Ting save you and send back someone who has unlimited potential to the divine prefecture? Gai Qiong continued his query. Perhaps Mei Ting from the devil world is more confident and cherishes talents more than the likes of Gai Qiong. Yi Futian responded, "I too think it's ludicrous. Your kind came to disturb the void realm and wanted to kill me, but a devil general of the devil world came to my rescue. It is somewhat ironic. Princess, it is prudent to check it out. Maybe he is hiding something." Shen Gao of the Shen clan said at this time. His calm voice was sinister. If there was to be an investigation, Yi Futian had to be arrested first. But doing so would cause a rift between the two sides. To probe the privacy of a Ran Huang in such a manner was not a great way to ensure the loyalty of the others. If Princess Donghuang did that, it meant that Yi Futian's future was effectively over. That was why they accused Yi Futian of colluding with the devil world. Sometimes doubts were enough to ruin a person. It all depended on how the princess would handle the situation. In God's relic, did you receive the inheritance of the great emperor? Princess Donghuang asked Yi Futian. But it was about an entirely different matter, which surprised many cultivators from the Golden Divine Nation and the Shen clan. As expected, the princess already knew about it, and if she cared enough to watch over Yi Futian, it would be difficult for them to have another chance to get rid of him. Yes, I had an opportunity in God's relic. The ancestors passed the will of our great emperor down onto me. Yi Futian continued. Even in God's relic, I seem to have seen the tombs of the gods. Princess Donghuang nodded slightly. Her beautiful eyes surveyed the crowd and said, "If the devil world wants to fight me for him, what the devil world can do, the divine prefecture would certainly do better. I believe him." Princess, Gai Qiong was taken aback. It seemed that the princess had the heart to cherish this talent, which was a blow to them. Enough, Princess Donghuang interrupted Gai Qiong and said, "In the past few years, there have been a group of talented cultivators in the original realm. Now the time is changing. Everyone from all forces ought to cultivate harder, so that all of you will have the opportunity to travel to the divine prefecture." Certainly, the people nodded, as the college chief of Tianshan Academy spoke again. Princess, my descendant Jian Qingzhu, from the Tianshan Academy, had also reaped fruitfully from God's relic. He and Yi Futian were the two people who opened the last door of the relic together, and he had seen the relic of the great emperor. His talent is also satisfactory. Now he has proven as Ran Huang with perfect divine will, and had studied and read all the classics that were housed inside Tianshan Academy. There is not much to teach him at the academy. I don't want him to get stagnant here. So may I ask the princess for a favor to arrange a position for him, either as a guard or as a valet, so that he can witness the glory of the top cultivators in divine prefecture and expand his horizons. Everyone was stunned when they heard this. Only then did they understand why the college chief of Tianshan Academy, as one of the strongest figures in the 3,000 realms of the Great Path, doled out flattery so often today. It turned out that he did it for his descendant. This realization made the others felt sympathy for him. The Jian clan, who was once a prominent force in divine prefecture, was exiled to Tianshan Academy. Now the family must have pinned their hopes on Jian Qingzhu to send him out and follow Princess Donghuang to cultivate. Even just as a valet, there would be great opportunities waiting for him if he performed with excellence. Jian Qingzhu was also among the crowd at the Tianshan Academy, and many people looked at him. This was someone who was known as the most outstanding figure of the Tianshan Academy. However, at this moment, he did not display his full glory, only because there was one Yi Futian from Heavenly Mandate Realm. But in reality, Jian Qingzhu was rumored to be extremely talented, definitely an extraordinary genius in his own right. Otherwise, the college chief of Tianshan Academy would never have the audacity to recommend him to Princess Donghuang. I don't need another person. Princess Donghuang glanced at the other and bluntly refused. The college chief of Tianshan Academy was not deterred as he bowed his head instead, saying, I know that the princess is guarded by divine generals, but Jian Qingzhu must have some opportunity to serve the princess in the future. Any random duties will suit him fine right now. Princess Donghuang was silent for a moment, but right then, many people raised their heads and looked into the distance. Those who stood behind Princess Donghuang frowned, and their eyes suddenly became extremely cold as they looked at the place far away. The sky suddenly changed colors, and the world darkened and dimmed. It was as if darkness had descended and shrouded the space. Dark Court. All the cultivators from the Divine Prefecture focused their attention there. Today, Princess Donghuang had personally summoned all the cultivators of the 9 realms to the empty imperial palace. If anyone dared to make trouble, there could only be forces that were at their same level. The devil world shouldn't dare. Now in the original realm, it seemed the only possibility could only be the Dark Court that was now in control of the Hidden Land realm. I didn't expect Princess Donghuang to come to the Void Realm, so I have not had time to make my welcome. A voice came from the darkness. In the dimmed sky, the light was gradually suppressed. But at this moment, a group of figures suddenly levitated into the air. Suspended in the sky, an extremely blazing divine light bloomed from them. The darkness seemed to be expelled little by little in an instant, and light above the empty imperial palace appeared once again. So a spectacular sight was before them. The sky was divided into 2, one side bright and the other dark, with clear distinction. In that dark world, dark figures appeared like a great army emerged from the darkness. Suddenly, there was a very depressive atmosphere that enveloped the empty imperial palace. Yi Futian and many others looked at the great army of darkness, slightly surprised. There were much larger troops this time than the one that marched into the heavenly mandate realm last time. Last time, when the great army of darkness had gone to the academy, it was not long after they had taken control of the Hidden Land realm, and there were not many of them that came to the lower worlds. The army in front of them at this moment was much stronger. Presumably, as all realms had been embroiled in chaos during this period of time, the Hidden Land realm had not been idle either. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.